All right, so let's kick it off with an absolute banger. The Chicago Blackhawks. They were eighth in the Central last year, otherwise known as last. 31st in Corsi for percentage at at even strength. 31st in expected goals for percentage and 31st in scoring chances for percentage at even strength. The only team they were better than in all of these statistical categories was the San Jose Sharks. That's not saying a whole lot. They were really bad last year. Connor Bedard is the savior of this team. He was the only one that could generate anything on this team. The outlook is a little bit different, though, but we will get into that in a second. In terms of goaltending, wasn't as bad as you may have thought. Their 5v5 save percentage was 23rd in the league at 902, but Peter Mrazek really held his own on this team and played extremely well. Their 5v5 shooting percentage, 31st in the league at 7.67%. So they weren't generating a lot, and they were not converting. Just bad all across the board. And then their power play percentage, 16.6%, which was tied for 28th. Yeah, this team was not good. There have been a lot of changes, though, so let's dive into that right now. In terms of key departures, nothing major for fantasy. Nikita Zaitsev, Taylor Radish out the door. Those are really, when I was looking at it, the only ones of consequence. I really had to scrape the bottom of the barrel to even get some names that were key departures. But in terms of key additions, we've got Tyler Bertuzzi from the Toronto Maple Leafs that signed with the Blackhawks. Teuvo Teravainen comes back. Ilya Mikheyev comes over in a trade for Vancouver. And Alec Martinez, the block machine, is there on the back end. They also signed guys like TJ Brody, Patrick Maroon. They really shored up their lineup and brought some guys in that are NHL hockey players, which is not something that they could say last year. So, Gugsy, is this team better? Is this team worse? What are your feelings about the Chicago Blackhawks going into this season?
I gotta say they're better. All they lost was Zaitsev and Radish. I don't know. Tyler Bertuzzi, I'm excited for him. I think Nate was mentioning this week about how he's going to be staple to Bedard, and we could see a lot of production from him. Last year he was kind of jumbled all over the place. His time on ice wasn't too hot on Toronto, especially the first half of the season. Honestly, I forgot Alec Martinez was a Blackhawk. I'm looking forward to that one. I think he's going to shore up that back end, but he's kind of a little bit old, little worn down. But I'd still rather have an injured old man Martinez than what they had to deal with last year. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a good locker room guy too, Stanley Cups and whatnot. Yeah.
For sure. He's a serviceable player, NHL player at this point still. Maybe not a guy that's going to be on a cup winning team anymore in his career, but he's a guy that could make the lineup. And certainly make the lineup on this team. Let's go into goaltending. So last year, as I mentioned, Peter Mrazek, he had 53 starts. He ended up being the volume starter last year and performed quite well. A 918 even strength save percentage on this brutal Blackhawks team. That is incredibly impressive. He looks to be the guy that's going to be getting at least a 1A amount of starts for this team. Laurent Brossoit was signed in the offseason. He had 22 starts with Winnipeg last year and had a 940 even strength save percentage. He's played pretty well the last few years, and the only unfortunate thing is that he is injured and looks like he probably won't be ready to start the year. So you may be getting a lot more starts for Peter Mrazek to kick things off. Arvid Soderblom, I think, is still in the fold. So he may get some starts here and there, but he really struggled last year. So, I think this is your tandem moving forward, at least when Brossoit comes back. How are you feeling about this?
As I mentioned last week, I judge the value of a fantasy goaltender based on the team in front of him, the defense in front of him. And, I wouldn't be happy to have any of these guys on my team. Although last year, again, as we talked about, Mrazek did great. I still felt iffy on streaming him. I still felt iffy on having him on my team, but he actually proved a lot of haters wrong. I still probably wouldn't want him. I don't want to take that gamble. I don't want to roll that dice, but he'll be on my watch list at least.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. let's go to schedule quirks. Yeah, why don't you talk to me about some of the quirks of the schedule for the Chicago Blackhawks this year?
Yeah, let's get to it. They got 12 back-to-backs. That's tied for 16th in the league. That's a 37 off nights. That's second in the league.
Yes.
This damn font, I'm telling you.
I should have changed it. I did
No,
not.
no, no.
I sewered you again.
No, you know what? This makes the episode more interesting. And it makes people click on the YouTube link. So if you're on Spotify, check out Apples and Ginos on YouTube so you can have fun little moments like this.
Yeah, these
Anyways.
sevens are fucking wild. Come check it out on YouTube, baby.
Yeah, you got to check out these sevens, guys. Weeks 22 to 24, if you have playoff schedule in those weeks, the Hawks will give you 10 games with 7 off nights. But on weeks 23 to 25, they'll give you 11 games, also with 7 off nights.
Yeah, man, 7 off nights on both playoff in both playoff formats is pretty crazy. Those are pretty solid schedules. 10 games, 7 off nights between weeks 22 and 24. That's near the best schedule in the league. So there is definitely some value for having some of these Blackhawks. It's just a matter of how productive they're going to be. It's going to be probably pretty hard to get Bedard off of somebody, and then we'll just kind of have to judge. I don't know what these peripheral guys do. I am a lot more confident in the guys that they have this year around Bedard, but there's still not premium talents. There's not much beyond Bedard. And I mean, Seth Jones, I think if he sticks on power play 1 is a guy that is a lock for your lineup, but everyone else we'll see. So in terms of a power play projection, there is more of a decent looking power play this year. I've got them projected as Connor Bedard, Tyler Bertuzzi, Taylor Hall. He's back. Did you forget about him? Because that's almost like a key addition there. He barely played last year. We were talking last year at this time about how he could be a sneaky value playing alongside Bedard all year, and then he just didn't because he was hurt. So, and then Teuvo Teravainen and Seth Jones rounding out the power play 5. I think this is probably the way it's going to look. Is there anyone else that you think could slot in there, Gugsy?
There's always Kurashev. I'm curious to see because Nate brought it up in one of his episodes this week that he has a lot of chemistry with Bedard. So if Hall or hell even Bertuzzi or Teravainen, these are I don't know if Hall has much chemistry with Bedard, but if anyone has a bit of trouble playing with Bedard, because Bedard, it's not like you could just make your granny play with him and your granny's going to get 10 points. You actually have to think the game similarly to how Bedard thinks, and it seems like Kurashev has an idea of that. So that might be the only threat, but it's just which one of these guys would move off for him is the question.
Yeah, for sure. It's also worth noting that Frankie Nazar is coming into the fold. I didn't project him, but he's supposed to be a pretty decent talent there too. Yeah. And that kind of could raise the ceiling of some of these wingers that aren't playing with Bedard, because they could be playing with Frankie Nazar on line 2. Obviously not near as awesome of a situation as it would be to playing with Bedard 5v5, but it's certainly worth noting that he's also in the fold. You also look at Lucas Reichel. He's a guy that really struggled last year, and you hope that he takes a step going into this season. But we'll see. They didn't seem really very motivated to utilize him in ideal situations. So he was kind of pushed down the lineup for a good chunk of the year. So, but that's how I see it playing out. It's definitely more enticing than it was last year. That's for sure. Forward projections. All right, Gugsy, why don't you take the people through my forward projections for the Chicago Blackhawks?
Yeah, Connor Bedard, star of the show. You have him projected for 36 goals, 48 assists, and 84 points. Tyler Bertuzzi, you got him for 25 goals, 31 assists, 56 points, with a nice 105 hits to boot. Philip Kurashev is going to have 15 goals, 37 assists, and 53 points. Taylor Hall, who a lot of people forgot was a Hawk, is going to get 24 goals, 32 assists, and 56 points. Whereas Teuvo Teravainen will get you 21 goals, 33 assists, and 54 points.
All right, buddy. What do you think? What do you think about these projections? Are they reasonable? Are there any numbers that are a surprise to you? Whether they be too high, too low? What do you think?
I think they're pretty reasonable. I'd be curious to almost hopeful that Bedard could score 40 goals this season. Last year he got 61 points in 68 games in a just dreadful Blackhawks team. He's got a lot more talent this year. I think if him and some of these new additions click, I wouldn't be surprised to see a 40 goal Bedard. But no, I'd say I agree with everything you have here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think that the ceiling I mean, depending on how the lineup plays out, some of these guys could smash through these numbers, some of these peripheral guys, but I projected them relatively conservatively just because I don't know exactly where they're going to play. But yeah, I think if Kurashev, I think Kurashev's projection is a little bit higher because I did project that he would be playing with Bedard at 5v5, just not on the power play. So I think if he gets taken away from Bedard, he is much less valuable than these other three guys would be, them being Bertuzzi, Hall, and Teravainen, than they would be without Connor Bedard. So, and then we'll go to defense. There's only one guy that I have that is of significant value here. Who is that, Gugsy?
That's my boy Seth Jones, the man who's responsible for destroying the defense market, especially that one off season. So if you got a Darnell Nurse on your team, you can thank Seth Jones for that contract.
Yeah, Seth Jones. The contract's not great. He is starting to, I don't know, do some things under the hood that are I don't know, a little bit more solid. I mean, I could see him scoring over 50 points like I have him projected here this year. And I don't know, he does a lot peripherally. I think this guy is maybe a little bit underrated now because of the contract. Because I think, yeah, it's also hard to tell if a defenseman is good when he's playing on a team that's so fucking bad. So you really have to dig into the numbers under the hood, and even then, it's hard to tell. Like how much of it is a team, like the team surrounding you that is causing the issues defensively. But yeah, I think Seth Jones is a guy that you're going to be able to get for really nice value, especially in Bangers Cats. He covers quite a few of the categories pretty well. We'll probably get lots of power play time. In terms of sleepers, I'm going with Taylor Hall, my friend. Taylor Hall. I mean, before I just feel like he's potentially a 60-point player, and he's not even really being touched in drafts right now. His Apples and Geno's ADP is 230.8, and his Yahoo ADP is 191, so barely even being drafted in Yahoo leagues. And I just think that's a mistake. I think this guy is going to be a guy that you can get right at the end of your draft. Like, what do you think? How are you feeling about Taylor Hall, or is there anyone else that you'd pick as a sleeper here?
Yeah, no, Taylor Hall, what I love about Taylor Hall is vibes are low. He was injured last year, didn't really do much. He hasn't done much for a while. His last memorable season, I don't even recall, was it that Devils MVP season, which was like forever ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, he's had some notable seasons, but he's never really reached that peak again, and I feel like vibes amongst the fantasy hockey community are like, this guy's a bust. But honestly, you're going to get him for free or with your last pick. He could be, as you said, a 60-point producer with a lethal shot in the power play. Yeah, I'd take him for that value. I don't see anyone being as valuable as that on this team other than Ilya Mikheyev, who's a Canucks legend. No, I'm just kidding. Ilya Mikheyev's no. Taylor Hall for sure. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, Mikheyev's the epitome of high volume, very low efficiency shooting. That guy has no hands whatsoever. Yeah, we saw it in Toronto here, and then we're like, oh, $4 million? Okay. All right, enjoy that. And sure enough, we were right about that. But yeah, Tyler Bertuzzi is another guy that I think he's not even being drafted in Yahoo right now, and I think that's a guy that's going to probably have very similar production to Taylor Hall with hits as well. And then my top three targets are Connor Bedard. Right now, his Yahoo ADP is 48. So that's the back half, or that's the very end of the fourth round into the early fifth round. I think that's incredible value for Connor Bedard. In Apples and Geno's leagues, he's drafted around 35, so that seems a little bit more reasonable. But the ceiling on this guy is huge. Like, I think 84 points is even a pretty conservative projection. Like, this guy is going to be he has a potential to be unbelievable this season.
Yeah.
And then going forward in the future. Seth Jones, we already talked about him. His Yahoo ADP is 146. That's great value for Seth Jones in my opinion. In Apples and Geno's leagues, he's 87. So he's probably not going to go that late if you're in a competitive league at 146. But I think that I think that he's still going to bring you some great value. And then, like I said, Taylor Hall, we already talked about him a little bit. Is there anyone else you'd add to this list?
No, I'd say you got it down. An interesting note on Seth Jones, Blake and Nate mentioned this. You know, if the Hawks are down and out during your fantasy playoff schedule, there's a chance Kevin Korchinski might get some power play time just to see, you know, what he's got. So that is one thing that they brought up that is in the back of my head, drafting Seth Jones. I think Jones is huge value where his Yahoo ADP is going, but that's still something to keep in the back of the head because fantasy playoffs, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely possible. I was not wowed by Kevin Korchinski last year by any means, but obviously he's young. I think he was 19 last year,
Yeah.
so it's tough to get around in the league as a defenseman playing on a team that poor when you're 19 years old. So I think that there's probably that's not the Kevin Korchinski we're going to see this year or moving forward. So we'll see. The jury's still out on that for sure.